Ever feel like landing that dream research project means like you have to crack some impossible code?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive is all about deciphering the grant writing game. We're diving into 3 sources, packed with advice from academics who've not just navigated this world, they've thrived in it.
Yeah, and you know what's striking to me is how these experts, they all emphasize that you really got to have a strategic mindset. It's not just about the science itself.
Right.
It's about understanding the whole funding landscape. Like, you're not just a researcher. Think of yourself as an entrepreneur and you're pitching your passion.
Okay, I'm hooked. Where do we even begin? The first source, Academic Careers, How to Get Grants, really stresses building relationships early on.
Yeah.
Like even before you're ready with a full proposal.
Absolutely.
And there's a story about Andres de los Reyes, who was a psychologist, and he attributes a lot of his funding success to connecting with program officers at these funding agencies.
That is such a key point. I mean, it's like you're demystifying these agencies. You know, imagine having a direct line to somebody, right, who can give you the inside scoop.
Oh, yeah.
What's the NIH looking for? What's the NSF looking for?
It's like having a backstage pass. You get to see how the decisions are made, what resonates with reviewers.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, our second source, Getting Grants, encourages us to broaden our horizons when it comes to funding. Like diversify that funding portfolio. They say it's essential in today's environment, which is so competitive.
Oh, for sure. It's not even just about spreading your bets, which is important, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
But it's about really strategically tapping into the sources that are aligned with what you're doing.
Totally.
There's this fascinating case study that they cite. It's a team that was studying renewable energy.
Okay.
And they actually got a significant chunk of their funding from a venture capital firm that was focused on sustainable tech.
Wow.
Which is not your traditional, you know, academic funding source. But it was a perfect match for their work.
That's a brilliant example. It really shows that thinking outside the box, you can find these unexpected opportunities.
Yeah.
Because, you know, instead of just relying on government agencies, which can be so competitive, why not explore foundations, corporations, local organizations? Who knows? They might be interested in supporting your research.
For sure, and be proactive about it. You got to like understand what are the motivations of these funders.
Yes.
And then once you've identified them, then the next hurdle is how do you write that winning proposal?
Yes.
And our third source, how to write a grant that will get funded. That one really digs deep into that process.
I like it.
And one of the things that really resonated with me was they emphasize making it visually appealing.
Oh, interesting.
And they're not just talking about making it pretty, you know, it's not about aesthetics.
Right.
They're talking about using clear visuals that back up your message.
So it's not about decorating your proposal. It's about using visuals strategically to communicate that complex information. Highlight your key findings. You want to stand out, right?
Exactly, yeah. Like infographics, charts, even illustrations to break up the text.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. Would you rather read a dense research paper or like a well-designed magazine article?
Yeah, totally, totally. It's about meeting your audience where they are. You know, they're looking at probably tons of proposals, so make yours that breath of fresh air.
Sure.
Something that's both informative but also enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about being visually appealing. Like, it's got to be memorable.
Oh, absolutely. Like a well-crafted visual, that's going to stick with a reviewer way more than just like paragraphs of text, you know?
Totally.
They actually, the source mentions a study where proposals that used infographics to show their data had much higher success rates. It's about bringing the research to life, you know, telling a story, but visually.
I love that. Okay, now this next point is interesting because it seems kind of counterintuitive. The third source, how to write a grant that will get funded, it actually says don't go overboard with the preliminary data.
Yeah, that's right.
Which seems odd.
Right. It is about finding that balance.
Right.
And it goes back to knowing your audience, those agencies.
Yeah.
I talk about the NIH, for example. For some NIH grants, if you come in with tons of data, it actually works against you because they want to fund new stuff.
Oh, so they want to fund the discovery, not just like confirm what you already know.
Exactly. But then for other agencies, like let's say private foundations, showing that you've already had some success, that might be way more important. And that's where those relationships with program officers can really help.
It all comes back to that,
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked visuals, preliminary data. What about the actual writing? It seems like all of our sources agree that clarity is key.
Yeah, but clear doesn't mean boring. It should still be compelling, right?
Right.
Your proposal needs a story. It needs a beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
Our first source, academic careers, how to get grants, they actually say, to think of it almost like you're writing a novel.
Ooh, intrigue me.
Right. So you start by really clearly laying out the problem, right? Like, what is it that your research is going to address? You got to hook them from page 1.
Okay.
Then you lay out your approach, your hypothesis, your methodology. That's like your rising action.
Okay. Building the suspense, keeping them on the edge of their seats.
Exactly. And then you end by articulating the impact.
Right.
This is the so what? Why should anybody care?
Totally.
Our third source actually calls this the money shot.
I love it.
This is where you're showing how important this research is.
It's like the final scene in a movie that just leaves everyone wanting more.
Mm.
And speaking of wanting more, our second source, getting grants, reminds us that getting funding, this isn't just like a one-time thing.
No, not at all.
It's about building a whole portfolio.
It's a long game, yeah. It's like building a house. You don't start with the mansion.
Right.
You got to build that foundation, right? So smaller grants, even internal funding, those can be super valuable.
They're like the building blocks.
Exactly.
They give you some money, of course, but experience too.
Yeah.
You can build your track record and just get better at writing grants.
Absolutely. And they often have quicker turnaround times than the big national ones.
Oh, that's a good point.
So you can get feedback faster. And don't forget about those relationships.
Oh, right, yeah.
Sometimes getting a small grant from a local foundation,
Yeah.
that could be your in.
It's all connected. Now, before we wrap up this part, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is rejection. Our sources are very honest that rejection is part of the process.
It's huge. And it's not about you or your research even. Even the best grant writers, people with millions in funding, they've all been rejected.
It's so easy to take it personally, though. It's like, oh, my research isn't good enough.
Right. But our sources, they want us to flip that script. How to win a research grant. They have this anecdote about a researcher who was constantly rejected early on.
Okay.
But they used each rejection to get better at writing, to get feedback, to refine their approach. And eventually, they became one of the most successful grant writers in their entire field.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's still tough, though.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips on bouncing back from those rejections besides just immediately hitting delete?
Well,
it's funny, right? We spend so much time on the technical stuff, the formatting, the jargon, but really what I'm hearing is it's about resilience, your mindset.
100%. How to write a grant that will get funded actually has this whole chapter called the Grant Writer's Mindset. They're basically saying that if you can see rejection as a way to learn.
It's a chance to get better, refine your ideas.
Yeah.
That's critical for long-term success.
So it's not about avoiding rejection because that's impossible, but just changing how you see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Analyze that feedback, even if it stings a little bit, and look for patterns.
Okay.
Is your writing not clear? Are you not getting the impact across? Use it to grow, Yeah,
it's like having a personal editor for your career, except their critiques could come with millions of dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the feedback is about stuff you can't control.
Yeah.
Like maybe the agency's priorities are different that year, or the reviewers just didn't quite get it. That's where the diversified portfolio is huge.
Totally. So if one thing doesn't work out, you've got others.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive here. What's the most valuable thing you think someone listening should take away? Even with all this practical advice, the thing that sticks with me is the passion.
Mm-hmm.
They keep reminding us it's not just about the money, it's about championing your research.
Right.
Don't be afraid to let that excitement show in your writing.
I love that. It's remembering why you're doing this, that drive to discover, make a difference. And I know grant writing can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not alone.
Not at all. There's a whole community out there. Other researchers, your mentors, even program officers rooting for you.
That's right.
Use them, get advice, and never underestimate your own passion.
This has been amazing. So many good tips. So to everyone listening, ready to go for it. Remember, start early, make those connections, diversify where you're looking for funding, tell a great story, and don't give up on those research dreams.
And here's one last thought. We've talked about knowing your audience, but sometimes the best research, it challenges what everyone thinks.
Right.
So don't be afraid to think differently, push those boundaries. Who knows? You might start a revolution.
I love that. Innovation starts with a daring question, a new way of seeing things. Now go out there and get those grants.